I'm starting a series of posts on this sub, addressing so-called biblical contradiction that are often brought forth by atheist debate bros who only have a very surface-level understanding of the Bible and its stories. Things that appear contradictory are often just a lack of information. In Isaac Newton's time, there was an apparent contradiction in his theory of gravity, that according to his theory, the planets should become destabilized from their orbit when they pass Jupiter. Back then, they reconciled the contradiction by suggesting God was keeping it stable. It wasn't until we had more information, the concept of orbital resonance, that the apparent contradiction began to dissolve. This claim comes from Forrest Valkai of the Atheist Experience and the line. The argument is basically, what order were the animals created, and what were the birds made of? Because Genesis 1 and 2 are telling two different stories. He brings up how in Genesis 1, God created birds day 5 from water, and the other animals and Adam from the land day 6. But in Genesis 2, it says God formed the animals and birds from the land at the same time, after Adam was created. On the surface, this seems contradictory, and that both can't be true, but I'm going to show why that's not necessarily the case. As Genesis 1 says, God created the birds from water, and the next day, created all the other animals, and then Adam. But this doesn't necessarily mean the birds and animals are actually walking around on the planet's surface, just that they are in some sense created. Now notice in Genesis 2 it says, "Now the Lord God had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky." This could be understood as that this is when they actually came out of the ground. In other words, God created birds out of water day 5, then the other beast on day 6, and he basically had them queued up to be formed out of the ground before making Adam. Then in chapter 2, after Adam's created, is when God brought them